Hey guys, it's Jana, and we are in week 3. And you're going to have to forgive me. I may be a little unfocused today. It has been a heck of a week. It was supposed to be my extended birthday week, but as it turns out, a pipe burst in my house and flooded a good portion of the downstairs. And so furniture's piled up in other rooms, and people have been in and out, ripping up carpets and hardwood floors and talking with insurance adjusters. Anyway, so um, I'm a little late getting my video done this week. We read a lot of great chapters. I actually really enjoyed them throughout the week, and it was a great escape. From what was going on in my home. But I really kind of want to, in today's video, discuss the last couple of chapters in the Catron book that pertains specifically to blocking and movement. I loved how, so chapters 17 and 18, I think. Yes. And I love how 17 starts off talking about the idea of directing in pictures. I've always considered myself to be a person who directs in pictures. As an audience member, I really enjoy and am moved by artistic pictures on stage. So I tend to direct that way as well. So all of the discussion and all of the imagery at the beginning of that chapter really spoke to me. Because it suggested, transferring my vision for the play onto the stage with visual images. And that especially rings true to me, what the author states as the theatrical truth of the saying, actions speak louder than words. That's a saying we've all heard, but the theatrical truth of that is borne out by the fact that audiences don't say they want to hear a play. They say they want to go see a play. Another takeaway from that chapter is, again, a list of the other hats the director wears just within the area of movement. So it is already in week 3. It's just been reiterated how many jobs the director actually has when putting up a show, even at school level. It was the part where they talked about the director being the psychologist, a sculptor. I loved that image too. The choreographer, obviously, even just choreographed movement, the magician, and the storyteller, each with their own specific importance and all having to do with the actor's movement on stage within the play. I it even just went to what is movement? Movement is actors moving from one area of the stage to the other. And I liked how the chapter broke it down into the governing principles and then the guidelines for each of the principles of movement on stage. Thought that was a great way to draw attention to the ways and the reasons for adding movement on stage, and provides a way for directors to avoid distracting the audience with random or careless movement. And it described how powerful movement can be in attracting attention in the way you want to. And adding to that, there were guidelines for motivated movement too. And, the movement should be plausible for the character, springing out of their objectives and their desire to reach their objectives, while also being recognizable by the audience. The audience needs to catch the movements that symbolize that the actor, the character is going for their objectives on stage. I learned a new term in that chapter too, picturization. I mean, I know the word, but in terms of movement on stage, even though I consider myself a director who directs in pictures, picturization, which is a more modestly scaled arrangement of actors, typically 2 or 3, that contain gestures that can be powerful, or movements or a touch that are powerful communications of the director's relationships, communicates that to the audience. It talked about blocking ahead of time, and that's what I do too. I'm a pre-blocker. I tell the actors that, bring your pencil, and I wrote down the blocking for everyone, and you're going to write it down. And that's my expectation, but you're going to do so in pencil, so that if, as we go along in the rehearsal process, if we add things or change things, we can always erase and write new blocking in, because they're going to come up with great ideas for their characters. And as they do that, I will see new things too. So we're always adding. So I always say that the pre-blocking is basically the skeleton of the show on which we're going to hang the meat through the rehearsal process. Hopefully that's not too gross for them. They don't seem to think so. In chapter 18, where it talked about the specific techniques of blocking, started with a quote from my favorite, Uta Hagen. The quote started by Arthur Hopkins, and saying that I loved it. It was so simple. The reason for walking is destination. There you go. Simple. However, I also loved what Uta wanted to add to that, which took that simplistic idea and broke it down into understandable and usable segments of how to incorporate movement for character work. It just showed how specific you can get. You can always just keep reaching the next layer or level within the work. On page 253, there was a chart, and it rated like the strongest stage positions to the weakest on a proscenium stage. And I was kind of struck by it. So it really stood out to me, because I always taught that there were 9 areas on the stage. And this showed 6, and it kept saying the 6 areas of the proscenium stage. And I thought that was interesting, because I was taught 9 areas. I've been teaching 9 areas to my students for 21 years. It's like they eliminated the center row of center left, center, and center right, and just had 6 areas. But even so, I think the way they rated the weakest to strongest positions on stages still holds true. I teach the body positions as well to my students, and but another thing in this chapter that I was new to me and interesting was the idea of sharing the stage and giving the stage, by way of placing yourself where you're giving the stage focus basically to that character, or you're shifting in such a way as to take the stage. And interesting. I have never experienced a director using those terms in all the years that I have acted, and I've never used them, but I kind of like them, and I intend to use them, because I'm teaching kids and I'm preparing them hopefully to go on into college. And so depending on who they work with, I want them to be able to quickly know what new people are talking about to them, so they can fit into that system a little easier. Stealing scene, I call pulling focus or upstaging. Same thing. The ideas of crossing and counter crossing. I've never heard the term dress. A dress for a counter cross, so that was new and different. I found myself just trying to figure out why it was called dress, and I still didn't. Um, Oh my gosh, it talked about making sure the actors aren't cut in half by furniture. That's very important too. And I kind of want to add to that because I deal with this all the time, is what I learned and what I call chewing the set, which means, if they're standing near a piece of furniture, they invariably lean on it or just touch it. Like, oh, thank you for being there for me. Oh, strong chair. I was about to pass out. So it's just not a strong stance on stage. And, it's like the character needs some assistance here. And so I'm constantly talking to the students about not touching the furniture on stage. I'm a big believer in levels and triangles. My students make fun of me. They say I'm allergic to lines. I think that's kind of lazy and boring when you have more than two people, but I do like triangles. That's interesting. And arcs as you add more people. So they tease me about being allergic to lines and in love with triangles. And it's true. Um, I also loved toward the end the conversation about entrances and exits, and it's just so power packed with great information and logical and yet very practical step by steps for how to be a good director. So I really enjoyed the readings, all the chapters this week, and hope this wasn't too awfully long for you guys to watch. I do hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing what you thought about this week's readings.